Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring, snowing and blowing bushels of fun. Now the jingle hop has begun. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. A jingle.
Hey everyone, it's Haley, and today I'm going to be doing another holiday gift guide, but this one is going to be for your reader friends. So I know this is a little bit late for a gift guide, but since you don't really need to make anything but a trip to the bookstore, I think it's fine. I don't know. These are just kind of some last minute book ideas. So last week I did a very Christmassy video. I'm sorry I don't really look as Christmassy today, but I don't want to put bows in my hair again and all that. But for that video, I did a gift guide for books for your non-reader friends. I will link that down below. It ended up being pretty lengthy, so I'm hoping that this one will not be quite as long. So let's get into it. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going by age and then naming different genres in that age group, if that makes sense. And you'll notice that a lot of these recommendations are actually books that are a little bit lesser known and not super popular, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. So I'm not going to be saying for kids read Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, because those are pretty well known. So that being said, the first category is kids, and the first genre is fantasy. So for this, I'm gonna go with The Iron Trial by Cassandra Clare and Holly Black. This book is basically about a boy who goes to this magic school, but it's not Harry Potter. The system of magic in this book is really awesome. I think that any kid would really enjoy it because it is pretty action-packed for like the last 100 pages. There's so much action and it's pretty unpredictable, so I think it's a pretty easy read for a kid, and it's also very enjoyable. And I also mentioned this in my other video, but I cannot recommend enough the Magic Treehouse series by, oh, I can't remember her name again, but I'll put a picture of one of the books here. This series has so many books. It's fantastic. It's basically these kids go to this treehouse and it kind of takes them to a different time. It's super educational, but it's also so fun. I absolutely loved those books as a kid. And then a contemporary book for girls, I would say The Amazing Days of Abby Hayes by, I don't remember who it is, I'm sorry, but these books were fantastic. It's this girl who just writes in her diary and she has all her friends and stuff. They're really just fun reads. And I also, as a kid, really enjoyed the Judy Blume books. Really any of them. Those are really, like, they're good, hearty stories. So the last genre is actually paranormal, and I haven't really read all a lot of kids books. I don't really remember many of the books I read as a kid, so I'm sorry that I don't have a ton of recommendations, but this one I believe is actually technically young adult, but I think any kid would really enjoy it, and that is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This book is absolutely fantastic. I loved this book. It's just a really great story. It's about this kid who is raised in a graveyard by ghosts, and it is just super fun and heartwarming. It's great. Okay, so now the big category is teens. So obviously I have a ton of YA books here, and these I think would also work for adults. So basically this is the 2-in-1, but there also is a separate category for adults as well. So the first genre is fantasy again, and it's really hard to find, for me to find books that aren't very popular that I've read, because most of the books that I read are pretty popular. So I'm sure you have heard of these before, but these are ones that I don't really see featured in a bookstore that often, so that's why I chose them. So the first one is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, the first book in the Grisha trilogy. So this is a fantasy series that takes place in kind of a fantasy world that's loosely based on Russia. It's very, very cool, really fun and enjoyable, and I think any fantasy lover would love it. Next is Incarnate by Jodi Meadows, the first book in the New Soul trilogy. I absolutely love this trilogy. This one isn't very well known at all, but it is so good. It tells the story of this girl who there have been only a certain, like, 5 million or something. There's only been the same souls reincarnating for millions of years, and then all of a sudden this new soul, Anna, shows up, and she's really treated badly because no one knows where she came from, and because she was born, someone else died. So it's a very interesting story. It's super heartwarming. It deals a lot with music, and it's an awesome, awesome series. The next one I'm going to recommend is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I don't have my copy right now because someone's borrowing it, but yeah, this is about a female assassin and she is such a badass. It's an awesome story. This series is pretty popular, but it is still an amazing read and I think anyone would really love it. And finally, I have Daughter, Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This book is really popular in BookTube, but I feel like it's not very popular outside of BookTube. It's the first book in a series. It's a trilogy, and I think it's just called the Daughter, Smoke and Bone trilogy. I've only read the first one, and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of a world, it's a low fantasy, so it deals with Earth as well as this fantastical world, and it deals with like angels and demons, and it deals with a lot of things. It's super cool, really fun. It really just takes you away. It's really engaging. I think anyone would love it. I actually do have one more, but I'm not really sure if I would count this one as a fantasy or a paranormal, and that is Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. This tells the story of a girl who goes back to Oz, and it's just a completely different Oz. It's completely desolate, and Dorothy has just turned into this completely tyrannical leader. It's an awesome, awesome book. So amazing. It's super, super cool. So the next genre is dystopian, and there are a lot of dystopians that I love that I'm not mentioning just because they are quite popular. So the first one is one of the ones that is a little bit popular, but I just love it so much that I need to mention it, and that is The Darkest Minds trilogy by Alexandra Bracken. This kind of has an X-Men feel. It's about these kids who have survived this disease and they gain special powers. It's super awesome, just a great dystopian, very unique, which is why I think any dystopian lover would absolutely adore it. Next is Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. This book isn't very popular at all, but I really feel like it should be. So this book is basically like Pokemon and the Hunger Games combined. It's awesome. It's a great, great story, and it's also going to be a trilogy, I believe. Next is Reboot by Amy Tintera. This is the first book in a duology. The second one is Re-something. I don't know. But this is basically kind of like a zombie story. I don't really have any other zombie books that I like except for this one. But this one is absolutely awesome. I should have recommended this in my last video I did based on TV shows. This would be a great one for people who like The Walking Dead. I just really didn't think of this one. Basically, people die, but then they come back. Some of them come back after a certain amount of time, and the longer it takes for them to come back, the more powerful they are. And the girl in this one has been dead the longest in the Republic of Texas where she lives. It's an awesome book, super action-packed and really cool. The next genre is sci-fi, and I don't read all that much sci-fi, so I only have 2 recommendations. And the first one is The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. That was very difficult. This series is basically fairy tale retellings, but like in this scientific world. It deals with space as well. It's super, super cool. This one is a retelling of Cinderella. Then there's the second one is Little Red Riding Hood. The third one is Rapunzel, and then the fourth one, which is yet to come out, is Snow White. And my second recommendation for that is the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. These are just really fun books that they're science fiction and they deal with aliens, but they also deal with real life things. So it's really fun, and the main character is a book blogger, which is awesome. Next is one of my favorite genres, and that is historical fiction, and I have 3 recommendations for this. The first one is Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman. This book is not nearly as popular as I feel it should be. It follows the story of Hitler's niece, and she falls in love with a Jewish reporter and starts to kind of find out the truth about Hitler's regime. It is so interesting, very well written and well researched, and it's going to be a trilogy. It's awesome. I love it. Next is the Lux series by Anna Godberson. This is a series of 4 books that are basically Gossip Girl, but in the 1800s. Super awesome, really like catty, and just, it's great. And finally I have The Diviners by Libba Bray. This one I could also fit into the paranormal genre because it takes place in the 1920s and it kind of deals with like ghosts and stuff like that. It is amazing, super awesome, and you can find this for bargain a lot, so definitely look out for it. The next genre is paranormal, and I also have 3 recommendations for this one. So the first one is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. This book is absolutely awesome. It has like pictures in it and stuff, so it kind of has that element to it too, like old pictures that the author found and incorporated into the story. It's such an amazing book. This one is pretty well known, but still I think everyone should read it. It's really not all that scary either, because I was worried it was going to be too scary, but it's really not. Next is Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins. This one is awesome. If you have a girly girl, you should definitely get them to read this. But really for anyone else, even though the cover is super girly, I think a lot of people would also like this. It's also kind of contemporary. It's a pretty easy paranormal, not scary at all. It's super fun. And next is The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hodkin. I haven't finished this book yet. I read the first 2 pages and I absolutely thought it was so cool. It's basically a psychological thriller where this girl, all of her friends die in this accident, but she mysteriously doesn't, and she's a very unreliable narrator. You don't know if what she's saying or seeing is in her head or actually happening. It's cool. Next genre is contemporary. So I have 3 here as well. That seems to be the magic number. So the first one is Winger by Andrew Smith. Now, this would be perfect for a boy, but also a girl. I thought it was going to be a really boy book, and like it is, but it also isn't. It deals with some really serious topics, but it's also super fun. It's an amazing book. I absolutely adored it. Next is What I Thought Was True by Huntley Fitzpatrick. This one also deals with some pretty serious topics and also some family issues. It's really just enjoyable and super cute. And finally I have We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This one is pretty popular, but it is such an amazing book. It will literally rip your heart out. It's amazing. And obviously for contemporary, I recommend anything John Green because I love him. Now, like I said, a lot of my recommendations for teens can also double as recommendations for adults, but I do have 4 here that I would recommend for specifically adults. So first, for fantasy, I would recommend The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I haven't read this book, but I've heard really great things. I've read a couple pages of it and they were really good, but I've heard nothing but good things about this, so I think any adult would enjoy it, and it is an adult fantasy. Next, for dystopian, I have Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Now this one I would also recommend to teens for a dystopian. It's a dystopian standalone. It's kind of well known, like on BookTube people know about it, but I feel like aside from BookTube, a lot of people don't really know about it. This is a YA novel, but a lot of 80s pop culture references are in here because basically what happens is this world is completely desolate. The little stacks here, that's what they live in. They live in like these trailers stacked on top of each other. And there's this one guy who he was the creator of this huge video game, and that's what everyone uses kind of to escape to, and they kind of just live in that video game rather than live in the crappy world that they actually live in. So basically everyone escapes to this video game, and the creator of this video game dies, and he says that he has a hidden Easter egg in his game. So if you can find this, then you win his fortune, which is a crazy amount of money. It would be like if you won Steve Jobs' fortune from finding like a hidden thing in the iPhone. Crazy. So all these people have been trying for a very long time, and it's just super insane. And this creator of this video game was really obsessed with like old video games and stuff, so there are a ton of 80s pop culture references, not even just video games, but with like everything else. It's an awesome book, and I think any adult would really enjoy it because of all the 80s stuff in it. The next genre is historical fiction, and for this I have 2 recommendations. First, I have All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I'm reading this right now, and the dust jacket is downstairs, and I'm way too lazy to go and get it, so here it is. So this book takes place in World War II, and there's a girl from Paris who is blind and a orphaned boy who is German, and they end up meeting up in somewhere in France, and I've heard it's just magical. I'm not that far in it, but it's really, really great so far. Anthony Doerr's writing is really awesome, super engaging. I'm super excited to get further into this, and this book is definitely very well known. It has been talked about so much, like in newspapers, like it's just the talked about book of 2014. It's fantastic so far, so I would definitely recommend this for anyone looking to get a historical fiction fan an adult or a young adult, but I would say kind of an older young adult, just because it is a little bit harder to read because it is an adult book, if that made sense. And my final recommendation is also historical fiction that is also downstairs, and that is Fall of the Giants by Ken Follett. This is actually a trilogy. It's called the Century Trilogy. I've only read the first one. I really want to read the second one though. It is such a fantastic book. Oh my god, someone recommended it to me, and it's like a 1,000-page book. So I was like, I don't really want to read this because it's going to take so much time. But then I read it and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. It's one of my favorite books. The first one focuses on World War I, and then the second one follows some of the same characters, but in World War II, and then the third one is more the Cold War era. It's so cool, so awesome. I mean, like, World War I historical fiction for me is really hard to enjoy because I find whatever I've read, it's been kind of boring. So this one was absolutely fantastic, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone, but especially adults, because there is a little bit of mature content in there. So that is all for my gift guide for your reader friends. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you. I'm sorry it's kind of late, but I thought it would still be worth it to put it up. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!